Hey everyone, let's talk about Manchester by the Sea. It's the quintessential slice of life film about Lee, who, after his brother Joe dies from a heart attack, is shocked to learn that Joe has made him sole guardian of his nephew, because otherwise the only other legal guardian of his nephew would have happened to be his alcoholic mother, whose whereabouts are kind of unknown at this point. So, that wouldn't have been such a hot idea. Taking leave of his job as a janitor/handyman in Boston, he reluctantly returns to his hometown of Manchester by the Sea, where he has to look after his teenage nephew, and is forced to deal with a tragic past that separated him from his wife, that led him into moving to Boston, and that made him into the bitter and isolated man he is today. Lee and his nephew Patrick struggle to get along, especially because Patrick is deeply rooted in the Manchester community. He plays in a hockey team, he plays in a basketball team, he has 2 girlfriends, he plays in a band, and Lee on the other hand would prefer to move back to Boston. So the film is basically about them trying to get on the same page. This film is all about grief. It's about being grief-stricken. It's about being in a very dark state of being that when you're in it can really seem almost impossible to cope with, almost impossible to let go. It can really be emotionally very disabling and disorientating. It's like emotionally being in a sort of limbo and in like purgatory, where you would just do anything to be able to either erase your memories out of your mind or be able to go back in time and erase yourself from history instead of having to go through what you are going through. We had another film about grief recently. It was Jackie. It's a film I also reviewed and I quite enjoyed, but that's a very different film. It's very atmospheric, it's very stylized and very haunting, it's very extroverted even. Like Jackie is constantly talking about what is on her mind and what is in her heart. Like compared to that, Manchester by the Sea is like on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's incredibly and consistently underplayed, understated, restrained. The cinematography is some of the most bland and basic and flat cinematography as you can imagine. It has the most bland color palette. There are no strong contrasts to the colors. Colors are never too warm or too cold. Scenes are mostly filmed with 2 cameras set up in 90-degree angles. Everything is very contrived, and like I said, the main character is very bitter, very isolated. He doesn't really want to talk to anyone about anything. It might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not, because this film does an excellent job at mimicking our main character's frame of mind, or lack of one. Because you see, grief has made this man almost completely numb. He actually says it himself in a very pivotal scene: there is nothing there. And of course that's not completely true. There is something there, because every now and then he does crack a joke, he smiles. There's the scene, for example, where when he visits his brother in the morgue, and of course he doesn't have a very extreme reaction, he doesn't burst into tears or anything like that, but you can really see the emotion on his face. And on the contrary, he has a lot of frustration, a lot of anger in him. He constantly gets into bar fights, which he himself starts. So yeah. But of course he mostly refuses to open up. He appears to have shut himself down. He is not really letting people in. And I think the main reason people love Casey Affleck's performance in this film so much is because at the first glance it would appear that he is not really doing all that much. He's incredibly deadpan, but I think that's precisely why his performance is so goddamn watchable, is because that he plays this character in a very deadpan and low-key way, but at the same time he manages to turn this performance into something incredibly multifaceted, incredibly varied, and to make it not one note at all, and incredibly human at the same time. And it just goes to show you that no matter how depressed or grief-stricken a person is, there's not they're not that way 100%. There's not just total darkness. Every now and then light shines through. And to quote Lucas Hedges, who plays Patrick in the film, what better way to be healed than to be heard? And that's Lee's main problem, is that he does not want to be heard. He does not want to talk. He does not want to share. Something that's really interesting about this film is that basically half of it is made up of flashbacks, but they don't feel like flashbacks at all, because they are so understated. There are no stupid transitions and weird effects and narration and anything like that. No, it feels more like this was part 1 of the story, this was part 2 of the story, and then they were somehow mixed together. And what's really interesting about that, structure-wise, is that we only get to find out about the tragic event that took place at exactly the midpoint in the film. And man, when we do get to see what happened, and we do get to see that it was Lee's fault, everything that happened, man, I mean, that would be enough to make anyone lose the will to live. And what's really interesting about that from another perspective is that from that point on, the film starts becoming more and more of a comedy. Like I said, uncle and nephew are really having a hard time getting along, and it's not like they're not trying. Both of them are trying their best, to be fair. And there's a very funny subplot that involves Patrick trying to finally have sex with one of his girlfriends. And the only problem with that is that every time he goes visiting her, the girl's mother, who is very nice, she is constantly constantly bugging them. She's constantly knocking at the door every 20 seconds. So, and so they come up with a plan to invite Lee over as well to come with Patrick so he can keep this girl's mother company while they are upstairs doing their business. And this sounds like a very good plan, actually, because the mother is actually single. She seems to like Lee. She seems to be very interested in him. But they try to go through with this plan, and it doesn't work because Lee, in very typical fashion, is just not interested, and he is not willing to talk. So it culminates in a very funny scene that actually turned into like very situational comedy even. I was not expecting it, and it worked very well. There's also the scene in which they finally get to meet Patrick's allegedly former alcoholic mother, and that scene as well also seemed to have been played more for laughs, even though it's incredibly awkward and sad. But the thing is that the film is so incredibly dry and restrained and understated that you don't really feel like you're sucked into the movie. You feel more like you're viewing everything as more of an outsider, and so it's easier to laugh at certain things in the film that otherwise are actually pretty depressing and sad. And of course, the piece de resistance, the scene that's actually on the poster of the film, is when Lee like randomly runs into his ex-wife on the street, and they sort of have this moment together that should be a sort of resolution to their plot, but it's not really, but in a way it sort of is, but not in a way you would expect it to be. And Michelle Williams in this scene fucking annihilates, kills. She's not in this movie a whole lot, man, but in the scenes she is in, and culminating with that one, it's just I have no words to describe it. It's an absolutely brilliant, genius, masterful performance. I want more Michelle Williams in my films. Hollywood, please. I feel that this is a story and it's a film that could have been done in many different ways, but at the end of the day, it is a Kenneth Lonergan film, and he said that he is not very interested. I mean, he is interested in giving resolutions to the problems set up in the story, but he is not at all interested in like making the story feel like it's wrapping up the characters' entire lives. And that's exactly what's happening here. I mean, things are not just as simple as whether they remain in Manchester or move to Boston. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated. It's not that black and white. It's very gray. And I think this is a director who really has a very deep understanding for human behavior and for human interaction, and conveying like just the awkwardness of human interaction. And this is a film, it's a great film. I don't really know if it's necessarily for everyone. It has made, I think, a really decent amount of money for this type of film. It can be a little bit difficult to watch. It can be a little bit dry and slow and flat and bland, but it's a masterclass in filmmaking. I also saw this director's first film, You Can Count on Me, which is pretty similar. It's a little bit more traditional, it's a little bit more classic, but it's a very similar story. Highly recommend that as well. Watch Manchester by the Sea, what can I say? Thanks for watching my review. My question to you folks would be, maybe I'm feeling a little bit uninspired by asking this question, but what is your favorite film about grief? I mean, I don't know that many films about grief, so maybe you can like let me know about some more I can watch. Thanks for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. Until then, folks, stay cool, stay awesome, goodbye.